You're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast with your host, author, and occasional misanthrope, Juliette Miranda. Go to theunwritablerant.com and you can subscribe on iTunes or connect with the show on Facebook and Twitter.
Hey there, y'all. It's Juliette Miranda. Welcome to episode 107 of the Unwritable Rant podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about unexpected toys and golf cart getaways. And my bourbon of choice is Brixton Mash Destroyer. But first, a toast. Fill up those glasses, raise them up, and let's say cheers. Well, y'all, to start things off, let's take a look at this Brixton Mash Destroyer. I'll tell you, I was all set to hate this drink. For starters, the bottle is atrocious. And the concept is suspect. All right, so get this. This is a blend of Kentucky bourbon and Florida rum. It was recommended to me, and I'll tell you, I was suspicious. Both the bourbon and the rum are sourced, then blended. And there's no information on the mash bill or the amount of each that's blended. But I'm going to tell you right now, the result is not bad. Now, if you're a bourbon purist, you're likely not going to be impressed by this drink. And I get it, believe me. Because right off the bat, it really does taste more like an aged rum than it does a bourbon. It's a beautiful amber sort of color. And it smells exactly like brown butter and sugar cookies. The first sip is very juicy. And like I said, this does taste more like a rum than a bourbon. But then after that first sip, you feel a little bit of that bourbon heat building, and then it starts to taste a little bit oaky. It is still tremendously sweet, however, more so than I like my bourbons to be. But since this is blended with rum, I get it. It's interesting, and it's incredibly easy to drink. I would never put this on the rocks. I'm really enjoying it straight up. And I think that this would work best as kind of like an end of evening, after dinner drink. Easier to drink than cognac, and a little bit lighter than brandy. Overall, not bad. Well, now that I am properly soaked in booze, I can get into my latest misadventure, which, like all good stories, takes place in a sex shop. This was easily the most out-of-place sex shop I have ever encountered. My guy and I stumbled across it on a recent weekend getaway to a historic town near the Illinois-Iowa border. The town itself is about as adorable and quaint as they come. Its big claim to fame being this perfectly manicured main street. It's lined with antique stores and cozy diners and national landmarks. And there, in the middle of it all, is that sex shop. It's sandwiched between an ice cream parlor and a haberdashery. And there was no mistaking what it was. I mean, right away it caught our attention. The wide front window includes two headless, genderless mannequins holding hands, each having black tape across their nipples, and they're wearing these vivid purple thongs. There's a disco ball twirling over their heads and crystal beaded curtains rustling behind them. And of course, there's that large purple neon sign fizzling with the store name, Naughty Kitty. I should mention that my guy and I are not really big on antiques. And we have no interest in historic landmarks whatsoever. We visit this particular main street for two things: wine tastings and bourbon. We start at the far end for wine, then work our way through various winery fronts toward our favorite little bourbon bar at the far, far end of the strip. So this incongruous little sex shop was about 3 wine tastings in. And of course, we could hardly wait to check it out. To get in, you have to go through these 2 layers of doors. So you first step into this small alcove, and it's got this giant side window where you can kind of peek in and get a better view of the front of the shop, kind of as if to test your threshold for all of the sexy mysteries that await inside. And as we're standing there, we immediately bump into a couple in the alcove. This man and woman have their noses pressed on the glass as if they are peering into a dirty aquarium, and they both look dramatically confused. I can't say that I blame them exactly. I mean, when you've spent your entire afternoon browsing through Ulysses S. Grant memorabilia, tit-shaped muffin tins are a little bit of a shock. So then there's that second door. and we open it up, and that leads right into the main part of the store. And as we step in, our entrance is announced by an electronic doorbell of sorts, playing the first few notes of Jeepers Creepers. I had to laugh when I heard that, and it immediately made me feel welcome. This store, well-lit, playful, beautiful, really, and worlds different from the sex shop where I once worked back in Los Angeles. Oh yeah, y'all, my illustrious so-called career in Los Angeles included a brief but memorable stint working in a sex shop. I was in the middle of my second round of 7 bouts of unemployment in LA, and still feeling very full of hope that I was on the verge of snagging my dream job at MTV. Several friends and I had gone into that shop on something of a whim, and I spent the entire excursion self-righteously correcting all of the grammar on the handwritten store signs. I was furiously scribbling out a misused apostrophe on a display for butt plugs when my friend pointed to a sign in the front of the store that said, "Help Wanted." He suggested I apply and maybe class the place up a bit. I had never really considered working in a sex shop before, so I took that as a dare. And I fill out the suspiciously short application, never once thinking that I'm going to hear back. I already had applications in at every single retail store in the valley. Bookstores, clothing stores, even Hallmark. And wouldn't you know it, the one and only place to call me back was that fucking sex shop. Not that there is anything wrong with working in a sex shop. Really, in hindsight, it was probably a better fit for me than Hallmark anyway. And maybe it could have been. Were the store anything like those wonderful porn superstores like the Pleasure Chest or the Hustler Store or even Lover's Lane. Instead, this was a dark closet of a sex store, located at the far end of a worn-out strip mall in Reseda. People wore raincoats into this store, not to conceal their erections, but to avoid sticking to anything. The back and side walls featured an array of adult toys and accessories, increasing in perversity the deeper into the store you went. An A-frame center display sold dirty magazines wrapped in plastic and videotapes. It was not the world's most impressive display of quantity or quality, and most couples who made the mistake of wandering in usually left without making a purchase. Instead, the store catered to wishful thinkers and creeps. There was no training, none whatsoever. The store owner and sole employee told me flat out that he only hired me because I knew how to run a credit card machine. My job was to answer questions and ring up customers from behind a counter that stood several feet higher than the rest of the store. From that vantage, I could see the entire length of that sorry excuse for a sex shop. And should anyone do anything weird, that was the exact word that the owner used, weird, I was to press a little red button under the counter to alert him in the back. Oh, I really wish he had been more specific about what exactly constituted weird, because all sorts of weird things went on in that store. Every shift, I could count on at least one guy coming in, hands jammed into his pockets, and rubbing vigorously while wandering the store's pathetic aisles. Other guys would come in and ask way too specific questions about the products that they wanted, just for the thrill of hearing me answer. But the ones who creeped me out the most didn't say a word. They would barge into the store clearly on a mission, select the biggest and meanest-looking toys they could find, then slap them down on the counter and stare, making me wonder just how fine a line there was between that sex shop and a snuff film. That job did not last long. I quit after one of my paychecks bounced and the owner offered to make it up to me in sex toys. If only he had the selection that Naughty Kitty here in Illinois did, maybe we could have made a deal. As my guy and I browsed, I realized that this store amusingly followed the same tiered approach to displaying its merchandise as that shit store back in Los Angeles. It kept all the silly novelty items and candles up in the front, then took you deeper into Dante's love inferno the further you go. By the time you hit that back wall, you're bumping into ball gags and bullwhips. Everything in the store was of the best quality, and lovingly displayed. Clearly, the owners here wanted the shopper to have as good of an experience buying their toys as they did using them. Except, no one in the store seemed to be having any fun. The customers all looked a little sheepish and jumpy, as if at any second the store was going to be raided like a speakeasy during Prohibition. I had no doubt that if any of these silly folks actually braved the checkout counter, they'd all be making their purchase for a quote-unquote friend. Now, me, I have no such qualms, and I will parade whatever crazy item I want to the front of the store proudly, but I'm willing to leave these people to their embarrassed silence. Not my guy, though. Clearly, the ridiculous of the situation had struck his sense of mischief. And I can always tell when that mischief kicks in. My guy just gets this little crinkle and twinkle in his eye. And then, that's where things get a little crazy. Because I'm not entirely sure then what he has in mind when he walks up to a wall of vibrators and dildos. But the one thing I do know is that it's going to be a problem. And I'm not kidding when I say that this is a wall of sex toys. Every conceivable size, color, and action is represented on stunning glass shelves that rise from the floor to the ceiling. My guy confronts this wall of mechanized sex, reaches up and pulls something that looks to be part vibrator and part egg beater off the shelf. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure how this thing is intended to be used, but it certainly looks impressive. My guy flicks a couple of switches, cranks up a dial, and this vibrator comes to life like some sort of Franken-toy. There's whirling and pulsing and something that sounded a little like barking. And this symphony of sex sounds is so intrusive in the dead quiet store, you would have thought my guy had started jackhammering through the concrete floor. Which, really, this crazy vibrator may have been capable of doing. Everyone stops their covert shopping and looks at my guy. He's now got a remote control tongue off one of the shelves and is watching as it undulates its way across a glass countertop like something out of Reanimator. There are hesitant giggles all around us as my guy manipulates every sex toy display in glorious abandon. If it can pulsate, jiggle, rotate, or twirl, he's got it off the shelf and in action. And as he's taking all of these sex toys for inappropriate test drives, a curious thing happens. People start inching toward him. I've said this before, it always takes that one person. Because now, everyone who is gathered in the front of the store, too intimidated to move toward the back, they're now creeping his way as if the vibrating unicorn tail my guy is waving in the air is some sort of perverted beacon. Unwittingly or otherwise, he has managed to break these shoppers out of their repressed shells. And the next thing I know, my guy is holding court in the center of the store like a P.T. Barnum of dildos. I'm off to the side watching all of this unfold in amusement when one of the store owners approaches me, shaking her head. Apparently, she is unsure if she should thank my guy or ask him to leave. I had to wonder myself, had anything like this happened in the sex shop where I worked, I would have undoubtedly been pressing that red panic button. Still, considering the sales that the naughty kitty was about to make, I'm guessing the only people reaching for panic buttons that day would be the spouses, partners, and otherwise of all these tourists coming home with bags full of unexpected sex toys. And with that, I'm raising up my glass and toasting to the lady who bought that vibrating egg beater. Good luck with all that. You know, this bourbon-y rum sort of drink really isn't that bad. I said it before, but it's smooth, it's easy to drink. And if you go into it thinking that this is more rum than bourbon, I really think you're going to enjoy it. And that actually relates a little bit to this next misadventure that I had. Because many, many years ago, my mother told me that perception is everything. At the time, she was trying to convince me to wear a dress that I hated to some country club outing with the family. And her implication was, well, if you can't act like a decent, civilized child, at least you can look like one. And those words came to mind this past weekend. My guy and I were barreling down a hill in a golf cart, doing our best to evade a small but no less angry mob. And I had to wonder just what people might perceive about our situation. I had to admit, it did not look good. As part of our weekend getaway, we had booked a cabin at a sprawling resort that kind of reminded me a little bit of Kellerman's from Dirty Dancing. The resort is nestled into foothills, with cabins dotted on the perimeter of 3 golf courses and expansive woods. It's a little like an adult camp. They offer fishing and kayaking and even a hiking trail, and I'm sure these are all lovely if you're actually into that kind of thing. But what my guy and I were most interested in was the entertainment at the main lodge. It had been described to us as a band when we checked in. And my guy and I are always up for live music, particularly when you consider that everything else in this little historic community shuts down by 9 p.m. Now, when you use the word band, certain perceptions come to mind, and rightfully so. You picture musicians, usually 4, all equipped with instruments and gear, playing music. So that's exactly what my guy and I were anticipating when we got ourselves all decked out for a rocking night at that lodge. Now, getting there was a little bit of a chore. You got to remember, this is a massive resort, and the lodge itself was a good half-mile away from our cabin, and all uphill. It was easy enough to get to with a car, but we certainly weren't about to drive, considering that we had been day drinking for the past 5 hours. And no way was I walking that nonsense in heels. That's why we called for a golf cart. Oh, don't worry. While I'm sure we were more than capable of driving one, because golf carts truly are the one and only vehicle designed to be operated while drinking, our resort offered a shuttle service to get around the property. Like most things in that crazy historic area, our golf cart was slow to arrive and just a little behind the times. We all pile in, and it chugs up those hills like an overweight jogger, lurching every few feet as if it wanted to cough up a fur ball. Our driver was this surly old guy who clearly hated his job. He'd cuss every time we hit a branch, and then curse out his manager who apparently refused to upgrade the cart tires. We felt a little bit bad for him and thought that maybe he could use a drink, so we offered him a shot from our flask, which he totally accepted. He seemed to warm up to us a little bit after that, and then deposits us at the lodge with the advice that we should avoid the veal. All right, so noted. The lodge itself looked beautiful at night. Lanterns with soft yellow flames led the way into the lodge, gently flickering as a variety of creepy winged creatures thrust themselves against the glass covers. And the lodge, it was everything it should be and more. Totally rustic and just a little bit kitschy, with lots of leather and wood and framed photos of landscapes and possums lining the wall. The bar was just off the main lobby, and it had a tremendous view of all the cabins and trails stretching through the hills. Even the bourbon selection was really good, so my guy and I have all the reason to believe that we are in for a great time. That is, until the so-called band took the stage. I don't care what you say, band was an overstatement. This entertainment consisted of a 40-something guy with a guitar and a vinyl notebook full of original songs, and his glassy-eyed friend who slumped over a drum box like a sloth. These 2 musical dynamos opened with Horse with No Name, not exactly a crowd pleaser, and then transitioned into 30 solid minutes of original folk songs. Y'all, I appreciate folk music, I do, but come on. Unless you're Don McLean or Joan Baez, no one actually listens to it deliberately. And God knows there is nothing worse than an amateur poet with a guitar. People were polite at first, offering a smattering of applause here and there at the end of a song. But by the end of the first set, it was obvious by the chilling void that we were all contemplating opening our wrists with our bar tabs. I look at my guy. He's been nodding off for the past 10 minutes or so, and I was starting to get a little worried because his head was dropping precariously close to a set of antlers jutting out from the wall behind him. This was not how I wanted to end our day, especially not after having had such a blast terrorizing a sex shop and drinking our way through the town. There was no way in hell anyone in that room could do another set. And that meant it was up to me to do something about this tragic folk act. So I quietly excused myself from the table. I returned 10 minutes later or so with 2 Irish coffees and a smile. I jabbed my guy in the ribs and I whispered to him, "Your name is Tully Kennedy. Whatever happens next, just go with it." My guy gives me his best fisheye, but nods. You see, assigning ourselves fake names in places where there is little chance we will ever see the people again is nothing new. It's kind of one of our favorite games, really. My guy and I are actually known as Kitty and Hugh in a string of seedy bowling alleys across the country. But this was a little different, and this new identity has thrown my guy for a loop. And I can see him trying to place the name. He looks suspicious, and with very good reason. The folk duo is about to take the stage for their second set when the bar manager walks up on stage and commandeers the mic. He clears his throat a few times and squints out into the hopeful audience. He welcomes everyone to the bar first and then says, "Everyone, I have some exciting news. There's a celebrity in our crowd, and I am told that with the right encouragement, we might be able to convince him to take the stage and play us a few songs." My guy turns and looks at me. I refuse to meet his eyes, and instead I start clapping wildly when the manager points right at my guy and says, "Folks, this is Tully Kennedy from the Jason Aldean Band. Let's give him a round of applause." The light guy wakes up and finds a spotlight to shine right on my guy, just as he gives me his best, "I fucking hate you" look. He tries to shake his head and refuse to play, but the room won't hear of it. They're all chanting, "Tully, Tully." And my guy, well, he has no choice. He gets up, puts on his best country star impression, and reluctantly takes the stage. All that's up there for him to play is a guitar, which isn't exactly his instrument of choice. You know, him being a bass player and all. But my guy is a pro, so he straps the thing on and starts to bang out "She's Country." It's the only Jason Aldean song he sort of knows, which becomes clear when he manages to mangle the lyrics 2 lines in. The room does not care. They are so happy to be hearing anything but shitty folk song dirges that they will clap along with anything. And now there's new energy in the room. People who are closing out their bar tabs are now ordering more rounds of cocktails. Conversations and laughter and general bar activities resume, and it is clear that my guy is killing it. Everyone looks happy. Well, everyone except that folk duo. They're standing at the side of the stage, arms folded, and clearly pissed to have had their stage taken over by some country guy playing music that they clearly think they're above. The singer attempts to take his guitar back after the first song. And my guy was ready to hand it over. He was. But the room will not hear of it. They're all clamoring for more now as if this really is a Jason Aldean show. And who can blame them? Lord knows I wasn't ready to go back to the lazy strums of a self-righteous hack. And then there's my guy, getting that twinkle in his eye. And when he starts playing the Darius Rucker version of Wagon Wheel, I realize what he's up to. He's fucking with the folk duo. The two visibly wince with every rocked-up chord progression, and really begin to twitch when my guy launches into a Florida Georgia Line song. He ends his impromptu set with Chicken Fry, and that folk singer runs up on stage and practically rips the guitar off my guy's chest. Sure, he thanks him through clenched teeth, but he's clearly relieved to have the stage back, and immediately silences the room by playing MacArthur Park, which is perhaps the worst song ever written. Well, that's our cue, and really the rest of the bars, to call it an evening. I head outside to call for our golf cart while my guy, Tully, settles our tab. Now, he's gone for kind of a long time, and I'm thinking this is because he's getting lots of congratulations and pats on the back for being such a great guitar player. And as I'm standing there, stars twinkling overhead, I'm kind of thinking to myself that this was a great evening. And really the whole trip was. But then I look up and I see that my guy is now sprinting through the lobby. He's running towards me and he's yelling, "Where's our cart?" I look at him and I'm like, the cart's on the way. What the hell is wrong? Well, it turns out my guy broke the cardinal rule in maintaining an assumed identity. He paid the bar tab with his credit card. Apparently, the bartender ratted him out to the band, who were now tearing through the lobby with a couple of their friends looking for a fight. I see our golf cart just up ahead, and my guy and I run toward it, jumping in before the driver can even slow down. Go, 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 we yell, just as a small but extremely angry mob is running towards us through the parking lot. Well, I'm here to tell y'all that a golf cart makes a shitty getaway vehicle. The driver has to back up in order to take a turn, and of course the stupid cart is beeping the whole way. We're looking behind us, we're freaking out, and that folk singer posse is yelling at us. They're hurling gravel and branches in our direction and making seriously headway on our pathetic getaway cart. Can't this goddamn thing go any faster? My guy is yelling at the driver to floor it as a ball of mud whizzes past us. Our driver looks completely unconcerned. Don't worry, guys, he says. We'll speed up just as soon as we hit that hill. My guy and I look at each other. Did he just say hill? What had been a comfortable 12-mile-an-hour escape quickly switches to a solid 30. And suddenly, scenery is flying past us as my guy and I are gripping the rails of the cart on a roller coaster ride from hell. No seatbelts, nothing, just flying down that hill at hellfire. And the driver is enjoying himself immensely. He keeps tossing helpful comments over his shoulder like, oh, I hope these brakes hold out, and oh, good, that puddle should slow us down. Y'all, that was not a puddle. That body of water was just a couple of beavers short of being a fucking river. And we crashed through it at breakneck speed, kicking up all sorts of funk and leaves and scaring the crap out of a couple of ducks. The driver turns around and says, well, I don't know what you did to piss those boys off, but I think we lost them. My guy and I pry our fingers out of the seat backs and look behind us. The cart has resumed its normal speed now, and the driver's right. The folk music thugs are long gone. Well, we soon roll up to our cabin. We thank our driver for saving us from trouble and offer him a hefty tip, which he declines. Nah, he says, it's been fun. Y'all look like a nice couple. We gave him the last dredges of bourbon in our flask, which he did accept, and watch as he drives off. I look at my guy. Well, Tully, it's been one hell of a great night. My guy laughs, gives me a kiss, and grabs my hand as we walk into the cabin. Y'all, perception is everything. That's enough out of me for now, folks. If you want to catch up on all of the back episodes of the Unwritable Rant podcast, just go to theunwritablerant.com. And I would love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions about bourbon that I should drink, hit me up on Twitter @morningneurosis. And now, if you will excuse me, I'm going to go off and find some more trouble to get myself into. I'll be back with more stories and more bourbon next Sunday. Until then, cheers, y'all.
Go to theunwritablerant.com and sign up to get early access to interviews and new videos. You can hear new episodes of The Unwritable Rant on radiovegas.rocks every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern and on IPMNation.com on Saturdays and Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern, and hear best of episodes every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget to connect with Juliette on Twitter @morningneurosis.
Girl, you was pretty as a Sunday morning, standing on the corner at Carondelet. What you say we make our way up to Bourbon, a couple hurricanes and a hand grenade, and get blown away. Let the chips fall where they may. If it's all the same, what you say, bon ton, hey, pretty mama, I can smell the gumbo. Sweetest taste of honeysuckle on my lips. Good God Almighty, I can hear the trombone. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this. Come a little closer, honey, let me hold you. Nothing tastes better than a bourbon kiss. You can be the flower on my magnolia. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this.